Well, mine's unofficial, yours is official. That's all right. All set? Okay, ready to go? Okay. I'll call the Thursday, April 10th, 2025 meeting of the Cumberland Planning Board to order. Roll call. Mr. Zook. Here. Mr. McDonald. Here. Mr. Butler. Here. Mr. Scown.
Here.
Okay. Mr. Bush is absent at the moment. Ms. Reese. Here. Mr. D'Ambrosia. Here. Mr. Costa. Here. And the chair is present. Okay. Since we have no minutes, you will go with the next item on the agenda. No, mine's here. That's yours. Public hearing, major land development preliminary plan, owner applicant Hartford Holdings LLC. Project name Ann and Hope Mill redevelopment. Location 100 Ann and Hope Way, Assessors Plat 11, Lot 159. Zoning Ann and Hope Mixed Use Special Overlay District and Lonsdale Historic District Overlay. The applicant requests preliminary plan approval to adaptively reuse the vacant and historic Ann and Hope Mill for commercial and residential use, including 241 rental apartments, 20% of which will be deed restricted as affordable housing. Mr. Modica.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you everyone for taking your time out this evening for the special meeting. As you know, this historic mill has been vacant for many years, and it's poised to come back to life. The master plan was reviewed by this board in June 23rd, 2022, and the planning board unanimously approved the master plan, as well as several items for favorable recommendation to the town council. Included abandonment of Study Hill Road, which ran through the property, amending our comprehensive plan to include the Ann and Hope mixed-use zoning district, and to amend our zoning ordinance to create that mixed-use district. Their master plan was vested for 2 years, but in May 2024, the applicant appeared before this board to request a 1-year by right extension, which was granted. And more up to date, in January of this year, the project appeared before the Historic District Commission, where the project was unanimously approved. Because it's a historic mill listed in the National Register, the project's also under review by the State Historic Preservation Commission. The project's going to receive historic preservation tax credits for the historic rehab. So when the board voted to approve the master plan, there was a list of required conditions. Most of them were related to traffic, and all of those conditions have been met with the preliminary plan submission. New material that has been included as part of preliminary plan include a landscape plan that meets our regulations within and around the project site. A lighting plan has been included that shows that all lighting will not extend beyond the property. And stormwater management has been reviewed by Public Works, and they find it to be satisfactory. And the applicant also received a permit from DM, a wetlands permit, in October 2024. There are a couple issues that were discussed at master plan that I just want to briefly mention. The first is related to traffic. And you know, this is an unused 15-acre site, so any reuse of this property is going to generate more traffic. I'll let the experts speak to the traffic analysis, but in this case, we're getting much needed housing, especially 20%, that is affordable, as well as new commercial uses that will help enliven the area. In terms of impact on schools, it was estimated only about 13 school-aged children would reside here, so not much impact on our school system. And the fiscal impact report, which was prepared in 2022, anticipated that the property would generate about $250,000 a year in revenue to the town. As outlined in our staff report, the project meets several goals of the comprehensive plan, including creating affordable housing, stimulating economic growth, and adaptively reusing a historic mill building. So for those reasons, we find the project is consistent with the comprehensive plan, and we recommend approval of the preliminary plan.
Does the board have any questions for Mr. Modica? Hearing none, we'll hear from the applicant.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Nick Heemond. I'm an attorney at Darrow Everett in Providence, Rhode Island. I'm here on behalf of Hartford Holdings, LLC. With me this evening is David Corsetti. He's the developer and principal for the project, as well as Eric Zwena from ZDS Architecture, Len Bradley from Dupree Engineering, and we're going to walk you through what I think is a really exciting project to be a part of in the rehabilitation of the Ann and Hope Mill. I'm sure many of you have memories of Ann and Hope as a store, hopefully not as a mill, but it's an important building to anybody who's been a part of this community. Anybody really who's grown up in this region has memories of this, and it will be a very exciting thing to bring it back to life, like so many other mills throughout our state. And other mills in the town of Cumberland have been brought back to life through a modern use, particularly a use which will bring much needed housing. We need it all over the state, but also to help the town of Cumberland get towards that 10% threshold on affordable housing. So these units, there will be 48 units that will be restricted for individuals making 80% of the area median income. And then there's a schedule of rents that you charge based on HUD regulations and such. So they will bring a diverse array of housing to the town. As you can see from looking at it, really going to make a tremendous improvement to the presentation of the site. It was very well received by the Historic District Commission. It's actually bringing it more in line with its historic origin by removing a lot of that modern front of the building that was added on, I believe, in the 70s. So I'm going to have Eric come up and walk you through a little bit about the design. Then we'll get to the engineers who can talk to you about the site, stormwater, environmental impacts, and then ParCorp can get up and answer any questions that you might have about what they've been doing in terms of traffic. But we have worked very collaboratively with the town on this. Your planning department has been about as easy to work with as you get nowadays in our state. So it's been a great experience working with the town. Hope you are as impressed with this project as we hope you will be when we're done. And when the time comes, we'll be asking you to grant grant preliminary plan approval and possibly delegate final plan to the administrative staff so that we can take care of the final aspects of it. But with that, I'll have Eric come up and walk you through quickly what we've done, what we're doing, and then we'll turn it over to the engineers. No, I already gave him the lecture.
Andy,
Slow and loud.
Andy, let me know if I'm not speaking loud enough or slow enough, okay? Nick warned me that you would. Eric Zwena, Managing Principal for ZDS Architecture and Interiors. Our office is in Providence, Rhode Island, and we have a second office in Washington, D.C. We do a lot of adaptive reuse work in the state of Rhode Island, and we're very excited to be a part of this one. It's been a long road. We've been working on this project for several years, and happy to be before you, this board, this evening. This mill, I don't need to give you any historic contributing facts about it, but originally built in 1886, named after the ship, the Ann and Hope. And we have always been ultra sensitive to its context and to its history. And we're doing our best to bring it back to its historic state. Mr. Heeman mentioned that we were removing some of the latter appendages added, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But the overall building square footage is about 355,000 square feet. This is a 4-story building where there's 240 units being added to this building, with 2 commercial spaces at the nose on the nose of the project to contribute to community outreach and engagement. The majority of the square footage is within the larger building that you see in the bottom right corner, but there is an additional 8,400 square feet in the boiler house that will be converted at a later date to a commercial product. The first floor is pretty self-explanatory. The pink represents on the left those commercial tenant spaces that I mentioned. And in the center of the plan on the bottom is the main arrival hall at the clock tower. The blues and the yellows are representative of different types of apartment units. Overall, we're talking about a project with 128 one-bedroom units, 10 one-plus dens, 48 studios, 40 lofts, 3 two-bedroom lofts, and 8 two-bedrooms. And I can point out different areas of where those different types of units live in the building, if that's desired later. The lower level is storage for the tenants and for general public. We are also leveraging the small historic pendage. It's actually a specific use. I believe it was the yarn room or dye room, forgive me, but that's an additional 6 units on the top right-hand corner of the plan. Second floor plan. Third floor plan. That orange color is representing our loft-type unit, and there's 40 of those. And then this next plan is showing that upper built mezzanine in that unit that would create that loft feel. Mr. Heeman also mentioned that we have been working closely not only with the state of Rhode Island, but also an historic consultant to ensure that we're doing everything we can to restore this building properly. The majority of the effort revolves around our window package and removing those one-story structures on the front of the building that were built at a later date. Very similar effort that we performed with this particular client at Wanskuck Mill on Branch Avenue, and that was another very successful project of 250 units. So again, very similar approach here. These elevations are just trying to express the demolition that we're doing at the outside of the building. So the pink have the demo scope highlighted, and the elevations next to them without any color are the final product. These renderings really help us tell the best story about the adaptive reuse aspects of not only the building but the site itself, trying to create a much more lush site plan, and Len from Dupree Engineering will talk about that in these future slides. Very handsome signage to announce the building, and again, just highlighting with lighting and with landscape and hardscape what we think would be best for the adaptive reuse of this project. This is the rear of the building, just looking towards the boiler house. We now have, as we've progressed through this project, have identified areas and locations for utilities, for specific landscape needs, and green spaces that activate and place make areas so that people can enjoy the outdoors just as much as in the interiors. I'm going to turn it over to Len to go through the civil slides, landscape, et cetera, but I'll be here to answer any questions throughout the presentation. I'd like to pause here just to ask if there are any for me specifically at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Do you control the slides, or Eric, you control the slides? Perfect, thank you. Perfect, thank you. So my name is Leonard Bradley. I'm a principal with Dupree Engineering. We're the civil, environmental, and land surveyors, civil environmental engineers and land surveyors for the project. So our responsibilities essentially included bringing the site into compliance with regards to stormwater, with regards to parking and landscaping and drainage. And I'm just going to grab my laser pointer just so I can point to the screen. So So I'll try not to bore you with some of the engineering details, but feel free to ask me any questions. I'm sure you're all familiar with the site. As Nick alluded to, this has been a very prominent location in the northeastern corner of the state for shopping. I have fond memories of going to the Stop and Shop in Ann and Hope. That's where I always got my Dockers jeans, you know, when the school started. But, you know, the site as it exists today from a civil engineering perspective, it's predominantly paved. There's very little landscaping, street trees, curbing, things of that nature. So one of the first things that we did when we were brought into the project is looking at the master plan design and renderings. We looked at how do we incorporate, this is a wonderful thing about pointers, they don't work on flat screens. So you got one of the special ones? So, you know, we can see that the dark gray shading is proposed pavement. The white areas with, you know, the end caps, those are all your landscape areas. So we're, you know, proposing breaks in the parking every 10 spaces or so and planting landscaping. We're also utilizing that green space for stormwater treatment. So that exists on both the, you know, what I'll say is the east side and west side of the mill complex. While we're on this sheet, you're also familiar that there's a substantial drainage channel that runs off of Broad Street down through the site and kind of runs around the building. And I want to talk about that a bit because that was we spent a lot of time on that design. But from a egress perspective into the parking lot, the entrance is going to pretty much stay the same off of Broad Street as what's out there today. And then we're going to close up the wider entrance along Ann and Hope Way and just have one egress here. What I'll call is the slip lane, you know, the right in off of Ann and Hope Way will remain. You know, so from a circulation perspective, it's pretty much similar to what's there today. There'll just be a lot more green space. We have provided, you know, a lot of buffering along the building. As you saw in the rendering, you know, this is going to be all lawn green space along the building here. We've also provided a buffer along the railroad track. But go to the next sheet, Eric. Thank you. So, you know, you can see we're wrapping around the building with the main access point. We've got, you know, open space basically along the southern section of the site, adjacent to Broad Street, and continuing that buffer along the railroad. And again, you can see we have, you know, the open landscape areas for drainage. Next slide, please. All right, so this sheet here is a landscape plan. This was prepared by Diane Sewell. She's the registered landscape architect that was brought on board for the project. So you can see, you know, this is a good example where, you know, you can see that we're planting substantial trees in the islands to provide that shading requirement. We got buffering plantings along the railroad and along Ann and Hope Way. As you're aware, the slope off of Broad Street is pretty heavily vegetated, and that's going to remain as is. Next sheet, please. And you'll see we continue the landscaping onto this plan here with street trees. Next sheet, please. Next sheet. Is there maybe a drainage utility plan? Okay, we don't have that. Why don't we, do you have an overall sheet by any chance, Eric? If not, I can log in and. Okay. You know, I'll work with this. I think you have all the plans in front of you. If you turn to the utility grading sheet, yeah, that sheet's perfect. So I talked about the drainage channel that came through here, and it basically runs through a culvert, a very old culvert that wraps around and dumps directly into the Blackstone River. Interestingly enough, someone, I don't know how many years ago, they actually walked into that culvert. I don't know if you've seen the YouTube video. They've walked into that culvert from the river, basically all the way underground, and came out here. It's some pretty impressive brickwork, but it needs a lot. It needs some work, just repointing, cleaning up. But that culvert is not large enough today to handle the storms that have been occurring. You're probably all familiar with this site, flooding during some of these heavier rainstorms. And that was something that, David, our client, asked us to closely look at because he doesn't want to have the site redeveloped and have it flood. Well, the thing that makes this challenging is this stormwater is not coming from our site. It's coming from the town, it's coming from the state. And as development has increased, as a lot of the single-family home lots, in the southern part of town have even been rebuilt, vacant lots built on, there's more stormwater when that pipe was originally built. So one of the things that we did is we actually put in a whole new separate drainage system from that existing drainage pipe. It's a pretty substantial, I think we use a combination of 5-foot diameter and 4-foot diameter drainage pipes, and we wrap all the way around the building. That's going to work in concert with that existing drainage system. We can't abandon that drainage system because the pipe that if we did a new pipe, it would have to be a 10-foot diameter. There's just that much water. So that's a substantial improvement that we've made. We're going to have the head wall where the pipes, where the drainage swirl goes into the pipes. We're going to have that rebuilt to improve the efficiency there. The other thing is, and if you've been through the lot recently, you'll see like there's drainage catch basins that can kind of run down the middle here. There's drainage here. We spent a lot of time working with, the former owners of the mill and their staff, trying to understand what was happening with the drainage, and it's so old. And David, to his credit, Mr. Corsetti basically said, I don't even want to deal with the old drainage because we don't know what type of condition it is in. So he basically instructed us to have it all abandoned and put in all new drainage pipes. So we're proposing all new catch basins and drainage pipes to pick up the stormwater from the site on both the east side and the west side. And that way he doesn't have to worry about a structure failing a year after the parking lot's paved. It's just going to ensure the longevity of the drainage infrastructure. So you'll see that, we're not reusing any of the old drainage, all new piping and catch basins. Eric, could you go to the next sheet? So what you'll see on our drainage and utility plan is that pipe runs around and dumps into the Blackstone River right here. And it's a pretty substantial opening. So there's going to be a manhole because we can't go under the river. I'm sorry, we can't go under the railroad track. It's not our land. But the culvert in this section is so large, we're actually able to combine the stormwater flows back together and have it all go under the railroad there. If you go back to the previous sheet, Eric, there's also a second culvert, small, that dumps into the river in this area that we have some of our stormwater going into. So it was a pretty extensive design. It required a lot of work on our part. We also hired a utility company to come in and help us locate and camera that and assess that structure, so we knew exactly what was there. That design has been submitted to the Department of Environmental Management. They've reviewed it, they've approved it, as did the town's engineer. So one of the unique things with this site, because it is existing pavement today, because it dumps into the Blackstone River, which is a class 4 river as far as drainage, we don't have to do any big detention ponds, which is good. All we're doing here is water quality treatment. So to polish the stormwater before it goes back into the river, So that's the drainage system that's been put into place. The other thing we did is we looked extensively at the water system, and we've met with Pawtucket Water Supply. There's an existing water main system that runs around the site that supplies both fire flow, to the fire hydrants, and domestic. So what we're actually doing is we're going to maintain the existing fire system around the building, but we're going to put in a new domestic system. That way you got a brand new water line coming into the building servicing the building and don't have to worry about water main breaks for the users. So we have met with Pawtucket Water and got their sign off. Same thing with the sewer. There's a sewer line that runs along the railroad. The town has a sewer easement. We're going to be doing new connections into the sewer. Again, new development. We don't know the conditions of some of those old sewer pipes. If they're the original sewer pipes, they're probably old clay pipes that are probably in pretty tough shape. So new sewer services. Let's see, traffic. Derek Hugg from PAR is here, and he can answer any specific questions on traffic. I know there's a comment that the site is vacant today, but during its heyday when this was active, there was a lot more traffic, back then, that I think when you look at, what we call pre-development, which would have been this mill and operate, or this Ann and Hope Stop and Shop in operation in the offices to today, I think you're going to find that, in the traffic report would support this, that it's not going to be a detrimental impact. The roads can handle that traffic flow. And again, Derek is here if you want to ask him any specific questions on traffic. Lighting, we have specified site lighting around the site. We've had a photometric plan created, which we provided, and we have adequate lighting on the site as well. So that pretty much sums up, the engineering. I can get into more detail if there's anything that you want to hear about, but that's kind of high level what we did for the site.
Mr. Butler?
Mr. Bradley, I just had two quick questions. One, I think you already answered about the drainage, but when I was reading the stormwater and the amount of water that's discharged into the river, over the last, as you know, 5 or 6 years, we've just had these monsoon rains. And so the river is flooded a few times.
Yes.
So if the river floods and crests, and so the water from the site can't drain into the river, is there enough capacity to hold the water until it can discharge into the river?
That's a great question, and we were asked that question previously, and we looked at that. Essentially, the river will not rise to an elevation that will impact the drainage system. There's enough pitch on the drainage pipes that it won't create what I would call a tailwater effect that would impact our drainage. So our water will keep flowing free to the site. There's enough pitch there.
And my second question was in the east parking lot, currently there's, dilapidated as they are, there's a set of stairs that goes from the parking lot up to Broad Street.
Yes.
Is that going to be rebuilt or taken out, or is it?
I think that stair will probably be taken out. My recollection was we were going to, actually, I'm not either you or Nick. Were we going to rebuild that? I think we were talking about rebuilding it to keep a pedestrian connectivity from Broad Street down. But I think that old stairway needs to be rebuilt.
Yeah,
So the intent is to keep a connectivity for the residents to be able to walk up onto Broad Street.
I think that would be important.
Yeah. I think, did that come up at master
Came up
plan too?
in the
I think we
technical-
said we. Yeah.
I know we discussed it. I'm sorry.
One at a time, I can't take 3 people.
It was discussed at master plan. I don't know that we ever came to a final resolution. It wasn't, a condition. I wouldn't make it a condition tonight, but I do think it's important. There's lots of little small businesses on Broad Street now that I think could really benefit from
Yeah.
600 or 800 more people living right down the hill. So if
Yeah.
we can make it easy for people to get up to Broad Street, I think that would be, economically, it would be great for those
Yeah.
small businesses.
That's our intention.
Thank you.
The intention was to keep that connectivity, but that, like I said, that old stair probably needs to be rebuilt. And it would generally be in the same location, maybe a different material, but yes.
In addition to that, there's a bus stop at the top of that hill too. So that's convenient for the residents.
Yeah,
That's-
yes.
That's another critical part.
Yes,
What we're trying to, the goal is to balance the ability for residents to have that pedestrian connectivity to Broad Street. Everything about what's going on in Broad Street meshes very well with your target demographic for tenants at this particular type of, mill rehabilitation. We want to balance that with security for the building as well. So that's what we're working through, is a solution that provides access up, provides access down, but that we can secure it, in late in the evening and stuff like that.
Yeah.
We want to make sure everybody's safe. So that's what we're been working through, and it's what we discussed at the technical review committee before we submitted here.
Very good.
I have a couple questions. Actually, I did take a look at the master plan meeting recently from 2022, and a Cumberland resident did ask specifically about that stairway, asking to keep it.
Yeah.
And the answer given was that the plan was to keep it, restore it. So yeah, it was something that was important. But my question, the Cumberland Historic District Commission Certificate of Appropriateness mentions a couple of conditions. Explore the feasibility of replicating a historic clock in the tower, and also. I'm sorry, say that again. The Cumberland Historic District Commission, when they provided their certificate of appropriateness, one of the conditions was to explore the feasibility of replicating a historic clock in the tower. Also mentioned preserving and displaying that beloved shopping cart conveyor. So I wondered if you could comment on those two
I'm going to
items.
defer to,
I can talk about the conveyor, because I ask about it all the time too. So because of the difference in uses between the lowest level and the first floor, it can't stay the way it is, right? And first of all, it's in terrible condition. But what we're trying to do is to take components of it and preserve it in some fashion on the property so that it can be, decorative in a sense. It's very, clearly if the bottom floor is a combination of self-storage, residence storage, or we find a commercial use for that space, you don't want people just being able to walk right up or having any sort of openings into the first floor where people are living. So that presents a challenge. But we talked about that at the Historic District Commission. We're talking about that still. We're talking about that this morning, trying to be creative, trying to figure it out. So it's still something that's under consideration.
I'm the one that brought that up at the master plan, only because that was the big thing for my kids. They were fascinated with that. They could
My mother
rid-
denies it, but I was telling David today that I remember her putting my brother in the shopping cart and just letting it go up. Right? We'd never do that today. We would have been in DCYF care, but she denies it. But I say it happened.
My kids would have loved to have done that,
Yep.
but there was always an attendant, top and bottom.
Yeah.
That wouldn't let you, so you got lucky.
We
Somebody
got
got
lucky.
lucky.
We got lucky.
Mr. Heeman, while you're up there, with the self-storage, I know it's very early on, so you may not know, but is the plan for the building management company to run the self-storage, or to bring in a third party who would run a self-storage facility?
Come on.
Hi, members of the board. David Corsetti, the owner of Hartford Holdings. So my intentions would be to, if we don't secure a tenant for the lower commercial area and it went down the road of self-storage, we would own and operate a good portion for the tenants. And there may be an outside portion that is given to an outside user to run, or if we're successful, we do own some other storage facilities, we may run that one as well. But we haven't put much thought into it. Self-storage is kind of like the ladder of the uses that we'd like to put there. And if all else fails, we would look to do that.
Thank you.
Mr. Costa, you have a question?
Yes, I have a question regarding the railroad tracks. I believe they're active, but I'm not absolutely positive, but I think they are.
They are.
So my question to you is, have you had any contact with Amtrak, number one? And number two, how would you be able to soften the noise of the train coming by this housing facility?
Yeah, so the track is owned by Providence and Worcester, and they run on it a couple times a day, usually during night. And what we are proposing along that line is, a safety fence, which we may put slats in, and then vegetation. So the vegetation will help damper some of it, but the reality is, the decibels coming from, because they've got to, in that section, the trains are always blowing the horn when they come through. I think there's, other than building a sound wall, which we're not going to propose to do.
Well, I was just wondering, I mean, I live about probably 10 to 12 miles away from it, and I can hear it.
Oh, yeah,
I
I hear it too. I live in Cumberland here, and I hear it.
So, I mean, but I'm not quite so sure whether I'm lying in bed 10 feet away from the railroad track, but
Yeah.
I want that whistle going off and waking me up at 3 o'clock instead of 6 o'clock.
Yeah. Yeah, we have, yeah, so we are, the most we can really do is a safety fence, which will add as a visual barrier and, basically keep a separation. And we got a 10-foot landscape buffer there that will landscape. The problem is, usually we'll plant, and I don't recall exactly what we're planting along the fence line, but it's usually a combination of, evergreens and leaf trees. So we all know the leaves are going to drop in the winter. So I think the reality is that it will be a noise that the tenants, it's there today. They're all going to be moving in knowing that there's an active line there. And hopefully they like trains. I know my son would love to live there. But yeah, it's just, we're doing everything we can to create a visual barrier and somewhat of a noise barrier
And
with the
what about with
vegetation.
Amtrak? I mean, would they be willing to maybe wait a couple miles before they blow a whistle instead of?
Well, yeah, they have federal requirements they have to comply with,
They have a cross.
So they have to blow the whistle. There's gonna be, it's just, because you got Ann and Hope Way, I mean, obviously you're going under Broad, which is good, there's a bridge there, but Ann and Hope Way, Mendon Road, I hear them blowing the whistle all the way up the valley, because they cross in Albion, so it's just, I don't think there's anything that can change from that perspective because of the federal requirements for the grade crossings.
But it's not high-speed rail anyway.
It's not high speed, it's just a freight, and I think they run, like I said, I usually hear them, and I don't pay attention to anymore because it's just in the background, but it always was nighttime when they would come up the valley, and they go down, I think, in the morning.
3 in the morning, between 2 and 3 in the morning.
They head down from Worcester.
And then
Yeah.
in the morning, they
Yeah.
come the other way.
Thank you.
I wish I had a better answer for you, but it just,
Maybe to tell the people before they rent, before they buy,
oh, yeah,
be aware
yeah,
what you're getting into.
yep.
You gotta
You
use,
have an alarm clock. But thank you.
What if you love trains, Mr. D'Ambrosio, you have a
My
question?
grandson.
Yeah, so I have 3 things. 2 are kind of piggybacking on some of the earlier questions. One has to do with the stormwater treatment. So you're collecting all this water that's coming from Broad Street and the surrounding neighborhoods. It's going into this culvert, going into the river. You
Yes.
said, what kind of treatment is that getting before it gets to the river?
It doesn't get any treatment. The existing town and state water, we're not touching that. It's just coming through our site. So whatever treatment the town has in place, really we're at the source. So I'm not aware of any measures that the town and state have implemented, but there's no opportunity for us, there's no way for us to treat the town or state's water. It's just such a huge amount. And if, trying to think of a good way to answer that. One of the things I will say is that there is a consent order between the DOT and the DEM, where the DOT is looking for opportunities throughout the state to improve water quality. You've seen it along like 295 where they're doing that. So I don't know what DOT has for plans in this area. It's much harder to do that in these rural areas or these urban areas, you know, that are built up. So, you know, but here we're treating the rainfall that falls on our site. That's where we have to treat it. We can't treat rainfall up on other people's properties.
Sure. Okay. My second question has to do with pedestrian connections. So we
Yes.
talked about connecting up to Broad Street.
Yes.
I'm noticing on the plans and the renderings, there aren't any sidewalks that are leading to Ann and Hope Way to lead towards Mendon Road, where the bike path, groceries, all sorts of commercial opportunities are there for
Yes.
folks who, you know, it's all within walking distance. So I'm wondering if that's something that's going to be
Yeah,
considered.
so there's existing sidewalks along Ann and Hope Way that go down to Mendon Road.
Right, but none on the plan that connect from the building, it seems, to Ann and Hope Way.
We'll take a look at that. It's a very easy connection to do because we've got, it may be, it's hard to see at this level, but there are sidewalks proposed. If there'd be a connection anywhere, because you've got a pretty big embankment here. I thought we were connected right in this area here, but we can connect.
Yeah, it just seems like
Yeah.
an important connection
Yeah.
for them.
But I know, like, we can't really connect in this area because of the grade, but we can certainly connect in here, which we have no problem with that being a condition.
Okay, and then my last piece is, I'm a landscape architect, so I'm
Perfect.
always looking at those
You
plans
understand all
intently.
this stuff.
Yeah, so I just wanted to comment that two things. One, you know, one of the requirements is to utilize as many native plant material or as much plant material as you can. In looking at the plant list, it's a little light on natives. There are some natives, but it's like maybe 50% of the trees and much less of the shrub material. I think considering, you know, how we're trying to enhance our environment,
Yep.
native plant material is really important, especially with the proximity to the river and all that.
Sure.
So I think that should be something that looked at a little
Yeah.
closer.
We can ask the landscape architect, I don't know if you know Diane Sewell.
Yep.
You know, I'm sure we can ask her to look at substituting some of the species.
Yep, and then last thing is the bioswale that you have in that western parking lot.
Yes.
Is that meant to be planted with seed mix or shrubs? How does that work?
So typically, what we do is, you know, like right down the middle where the lowest point is, that's gonna be, you know, either a mixture of, you know, like gravel, sand, you know, mixing, and we may lumen seed it. I have to look at the cross section. So like the low point where the water's gonna sit, we wouldn't put any like shrubs or anything there. The shrubs and trees would be kind of on the outer edges, because we don't want those getting, you know, sediments, you know, building up along the base of the trees, and we want to keep the sediment trap area free, but then the landscaping and the shrubs would be on the perimeter.
Yeah, I know from experience that, you know, typically the bottom may be vegetated with grasses and such.
Yeah.
To filter out some of the pollutants and trap
Yeah.
the sand. There's a hatch pattern on the plan, so I couldn't quite tell what it was.
Yeah, that's why I don't remember what the cross-section looked like. I can pull it up and look at it. But the idea is that it would either be, you know, like a gravel bottom or lumen seed.
Okay.
My preference would be lumen seed, that way it's green and manicured. That's what we typically do.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Scullin.
Yeah, I just want to go back to the issue of the train and the noise for a
Yes.
second. The windows in the building, are they combination windows or are they sealed windows?
I defer to the.
I know that's not your question probably,
Yeah.
but it just seems to me the noise reduction would be easier if they were sealed windows compared to being able to be combination windows. I don't know.
Absolutely correct. I was thinking the same thing. We've dealt with this issue with windows for noise, and sealed windows is one way to do it, but they also a lot, the historic nature of these windows that have specific requirements for the historic district, the Department of Interiors, they need to have certain relief at the jamb and at the panes of the glass. So Pella is a window company, and I'm not saying we're using Pella. I don't think I'm comfortable confirming this just yet. But they do make an upgraded window that meets the historic guidelines, that also has a higher sound transmission coefficient that we personally used at a property right on the adjacent to 195, because we were worried about that noise. It does trigger a little bit of an overage on cost, but maybe for the west side of the building, maybe that's something that needs to be
Yeah,
considered.
it only needs to be on one side of the building,
Exactly.
probably. Okay,
Exactly.
thank you.
But that is the best way to control the train noise, much better than vegetation or anything else.
Thank you.
Mr. Costa, then Ms. Reese, and then Mr. McDonald.
Just quickly, there was some discussion about the water that collects occasionally with heavy rainstorms down by 1 Mendon Road, down by the Dunkin' Donuts, down below.
Yes.
Will any of this make that worse?
No. Nope, all our water runs to the Blackstone River, down gradient of that. So there's no water from our site that runs onto Ann and Hope Way and down towards Mendon Road.
Down to Mendon Road?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Reese?
Hi. You answer a lot of my questions, but I do have one question, and that is the vegetation from Broad Street.
Yes.
So I don't see any plans. What am I going to look at when I'm on Broad Street? Right now, needs cleaning, right?
Yep.
What are you going to just clean it up? Or are you going to replant? What are you going to do with that hill?
So and I can let Mr. Corsetti speak to this as well, but it's pretty heavily vegetated. What I normally see people do is if there's dead trees in there and such, go and clean them out, any diseased trees. If you look at some of the other properties that Mr. Corsetti owns, they're beautifully maintained, so I'm sure he'll have that cleaned up. We're not proposing to clear cut that slope and
Right, right.
revegetate.
I
We
hope
want
not.
to keep what's
Right.
there. So I think we need to have it assessed, and anything that's diseased should come down, and we could plant, trees in its place.
And the fence?
Excuse me?
The fence on Broad Street?
I think we talked about replacing that. The fence, I think there was a new one. Oh, okay, yeah, we'll look at the fence. I know that some sections are in pretty tough
Yeah.
shape, so,
Most of
again,
it is.
I don't want to be spending David's money on
No,
them,
but most of it
I
is
know
not
we-
in good, it's not going to look nice.
yeah.
The other question that I have, I think you answered, is the fence. I think when you came in 22, I think I asked about a fence around or along the railroad.
Yes,
I didn't see it on the designs, but he did mention there will be a fence there.
we're putting a fence there, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and we haven't settled on the final product yet,
Yeah.
but we are putting a fence there. And it's probably going to serve mainly as a visual barrier and a safety barrier.
Yeah, that was my
Yeah,
thing at the time. I think I brought out safety. I think it would be
Yeah.
nice to have a fence there for safety reasons.
yeah.
We would make that fence to, Mrs. Reese, familiar with like a pole fence that you can't
Yeah.
climb over?
Right,
It would be similar to that, so that
Okay.
kids couldn't jump the fence.
yeah, because there's,
The white opaque.
A little square, the little square.
yeah,
And with respect to the
Broad
the
Street.
wooded area on Broad Street, I've looked at that thoroughly. And what you have now is a lot of overgrowth, a lot
Yeah.
of trees just
Yeah.
on top of each other, that are killing other trees. So we would thin it out, we'd clean it up, and we would maintain the trees that are there. So we would prune them, make sure they're healthy, and just to add to whatever it could be added to that area. But I'm fully intent to keep it, wooded and
Yeah, it
have
just
that
needs
buffer.
cleaning. It's been neglected for a
Exactly.
long time, so I understand. And it's, when we look at it, when I go by, and by the way, I am on the other side of the train track, so the noise is there, but you after 47 or 54 years, you get used to it.
I'm used to it.
And like, yeah, but the houses do shake a little bit when the train goes
Yeah.
by also, so
Yeah.
it's gonna be an
It-
impact.
And luckily, the way the mill is built, it's a very sound.
Yeah,
They don't build them
I'm
like that
sure,
anymore,
we
so-
never felt it in the
Yeah.
real, but,
Yeah.
the traffic, you're gonna talk about traffic after?
So our traffic engineer is here, he can speak to it, but we did update and present a new traffic study, and we addressed all the comments that were raised at master plan, but we can have Derek, come up and give a quick presentation on traffic, if
I
you like.
don't need a presentation, but I can tell
If
you.
you, what I would say is if,
About traffic, I
if you
can
have
present the traffic to you.
yeah, if you have questions on traffic, we can more
I
than,
think you mentioned that years ago, there was a lot of traffic.
Yes.
Already when the mill was running but we didn't have 5 schools in the area.
no,
And the families didn't have 3 cars, they had 1, and some of them didn't even have 1 car.
Right.
So that made a big difference.
Yes.
Now it's traffic,
yes,
that's it.
yeah.
Ms. McDonald?
Yeah, I have something about the railroads, but from a different standpoint. And in Mr. Modica's memo, he mentioned that as part of the traffic issue that I want to address the issue of trains, but not from the issue of sound, but from the issue of traffic. Can you hear me now? Yes. Okay. On Mr. Modica's memo, it's got us being provided with approximate schedule of the trains. And what I heard is a couple of times a day, mostly at night.
Yeah, what my end is,
Okay,
Yes.
I don't want to make anything any bigger than it is. But there's just Ann and Hope Way. And with 240-odd units at a particular time of day, I don't know how many of them are working, but there's going to be, let's say, 7 o'clock in the morning, there's going to be cars. And I'm just wondering, is it going to create a problem? You can't control it, I understand that. The other thing, I can't tell from the schematics, but if one attempts to exit the property on the east, they cannot get to where they can exit the property from the western side of the building, is that correct?
so if they leave the property here,
Yep.
they can come out and take a left and go down Ann Hope and come back in.
No, okay. What I'm getting at is if someone is on the western side of the building and is leaving to go to work,
Yes,
and there's a train going by,
which would be down off the edge of Sheet.
right, they don't have they have the option of taking a
They
right
can
and
take
going
a
up.
right
Okay,
and go out.
all right, that's,
And they can also go around the building if they have to and go out in Broad.
okay. That's just a concern that at commuter hour, perhaps they run a train. I've seen a train when I'm on the bike path, freight train going by 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that with the train is obviously, we can't dictate their schedule to them. We looked into it, and just like the noise, it's one of those existing conditions that is there, it's there today. We're not making it worse. The people that live here will have an option that if there is a train coming, they can get out to Broad Street and go to Mendon Road North or go to Mendon Road South, Broad Street down. So it's not like they're gonna be stuck. They can still get to where they need to go.
And I'm sure you'll have a schedule for these people, right? Of the trains, if there's a.
Well, that's the thing,
schedule
trying to get
available.
trying to get P&W to commit to a set schedule. You're not gonna get that, but I think all you can do is look at historically how they operate. Good luck getting them on the phone. Yeah, because P&W's been sold, they're operated by Genesee Wyoming Railroad, which is out of state, so. And the issue is that the trains basically operate on their customer's schedule. So if you have a customer down at Port of Providence and needs something picked up, they're gonna go pick it up based on when the customer needs it picked up and delivered back when the customer needs it. So it's one of those things that's really outside of our control.
Anyone else? Not that it has to be answered right at the moment, but, sometime this evening, this is a very large undertaking. And if someone could talk about, number one is how's it gonna be phasing, for one thing? And what is the schedule of, and I don't mean specific enough, I don't want anybody tied down, as far as the work that you start and progress from, demolition and so on and so forth to the actual construction of the units and so on. So, it doesn't have to be talked about right at this moment, because I know we want to talk about traffic. But I just don't want to put that out there so that we can get a response.
Yeah, I mean, we can have Mr. Corsetti address that.
So the goal would be to complete certain aspects of the building, certain ends of the building. For instance, if there's a 2-story in the back, and then the front half is built into a 4-story. So we would, it's a great question, because we've spent a lot of time in how to phase this. So the goal would be to finish 2-floor sections at a time, breaking that into 6 sections. So you would have the top 2 floors, which would be 1 section, and then the bottom 2, which are the longer floors, would be broken into halves, and those would be second and third phases. Ideally, we'd like to complete one end, maybe the east end of the parking lot, so that we could then move to the back. So it would be broken into phases. We're still undertaking the science of what are those best phases, how are those best executed.
Yeah, that's why I asked it. I know it's a large undertaking, and I'm sure it's been on your mind.
That's a great question.
As far as, how you're gonna phase it. And I understand that you probably will have simultaneous work going on. When they're working on the floors here, they may be working on, I don't know, either major electrical or even some of the site work. I mean, obviously, they're not gonna be bumping into each other, and you're gonna work that out, but I thought it'd be a good idea to ask that question. Anyone else at this point? Traffic, is that what we're going to next?
Yeah, one of the things I just would like to add, that Mr. Corsetti recently finished renovating Onset Mill in Providence.
So we completed that actually over a year and a half ago. We're close to completing 2 mills on Roosevelt Avenue in Central Falls, right on the Blackstone. I don't know if you're familiar with those, on the corner of Cross Street and Roosevelt. One is 110 unit apartment building, and then the other one is a self-storage building, only because the building had limited uses. It was so boxy that you couldn't utilize apartments. It wouldn't work for apartments because you'd have just massive, long bowling alley type apartments. But we looked at office, we looked at everything, and self-storage ultimately would work there. So those will be done in the next few months, and we're looking forward to the ribbon cutting there. The mayor and the town have embraced the project and very happy.
Yes. So those are good examples if you want to see the work that Mr. Corsetti's done.
Last mill, we won the Rotary Award for Best Historic 2024 Best Historic Rehab. One of the best historic in the state, so Wanscott Mill. And that was a dilapidated, similar in size to this, slightly smaller, but rough shape. It just needed a lot of work, but we were able to.
That had a lot of the same challenges. That's right on Greenwich Avenue, Providence. You get off
Used to be-
right-hand turn. But that had flooding challenges, that had traps, that had traffic, that, that's, you want to talk about traffic. What the city has done there is just incredible, with stop signs out of nowhere. And managed it very, very well. It's been very well received by its tenants. Worked very collaboratively with the city to get it done. So, I mean, they certainly have the experience to get projects like this done, and have done so. I was on the other side of Central Falls, was on the assistant solicitor in Central Falls. So we've had a good working relationship with David and his company there. So I think you'll be very happy with the way it all turns out. And it turn out in a timely fashion, as is possible to do it.
I had one thing. Someone mentioned the clock tower. I would love to put that clock tower back together. And I think, Eric, you mentioned, is that clock here?
Well, I came up in the commission that the clock is actually here in the building.
Oh, is it
I
really?
think that's what.
Yeah, I'd love to put that back together.
We have our clock back?
Yes.
I think, I mean, I could be making that up. But I'm fairly certain that when we had the HDC meeting, that one of the members said that the town actually was in possession of the clock itself, taken out of the building, and that it's displayed somewhere.
I would be all putting that back together. I think that would be great.
Mrs. Scum?
I guess my question to Mr. Corsetti, once this project starts, have you got an estimated time frame as to when it starts and when it could be completed? I mean, I'm not going to hold you to it, obviously.
So, yes.
Specifically.
So typically, these projects are, you start and you just uncover all these things, and you think you're going to get done on a Monday, and you get done on a Friday. So we've spent the last 2 years just going through this mill in depth and getting it prepped so that when we start, there's no guesswork, there's no surprises, we can just run through it. And this, although massive, is more on the simplistic side than other mills. It's one building, straight runs. You're not dealing with rivers that cross the building. There's one on a bookend, but it doesn't cross the building. You're not dealing with structural issues. This building is solid. It doesn't have any structural issues. The roof's in good shape. The interior floors, beams are in good shape. There's no rot. The Chase family Jimmy did a fantastic job taking care of the mill over the decades. So it's really a project that you can start and finish. So we anticipate having this project completed and leased up in 3 years. That's our goal.
3 years.
And when we do start, there'll be an opportunity maybe to bring the board through and see the start. You can see the beginning and the end. When we finish it, we'll bring it back through.
Okay, thank you.
I had an opportunity a couple of years ago. Mr. Stevens set up a meeting that we actually toured the inside of the mill, top to bottom. It was quite interesting.
I can tell you it looks much different, but it's impressive. It is, first time I fall in love with these old buildings. It's what I've been doing for the last 30 years or so. We've done a lot of mills. And this one, I gravitated towards this mill. It was impressive. No, and then the history, you speak with, Nick grew up in Cumberland. Everybody, I have so many friends that grew up in Cumberland that they light up when they hear Ann and Hope Mill. So I look forward to hopefully bringing it back to its former glory.
Well, I certainly like going back to the original and getting rid of some of, they were kind of atrocious additions. It kind of took away from the architecture of the building. Back when these mills were built, I mean, there was quite a bit of thought into it. It wasn't just a place where they manufactured something. They built something that, would stand up forever, practically, but they were proud of the building itself.
The first thing we do when we get into these projects is we peel back the onion to where it was its original, what it was originally. And that requires just putting windows back where they weren't, going through a lot of painstaking effort to make the mill look like it did the day it was built, and that's what it looked like when it was built. So that's our goal. So like, as you said, we would get rid of a lot of the, you know, the block, the concrete block added structures that were built afterwards, and bring it back to its former original structure.
Quick question.
Mr. Costa?
I apologize if this has been discussed this evening or if it's in the paperwork. I've gone through some of it, but not all of it. But the boiler room in the stack, is that staying?
That is, I would never get rid of it. It's too much character, but it will stay, and we have to identify creative use. A brew house, something that the neighborhood, the town could enjoy, is what we're leaning towards. I have some restaurants in some of our other developments that have been successful. So as of now, the intent would be to do some type of brew house, some kind of restaurant to occupy that space with outdoor seating, and, you know, make it as open as possible, you know, bring in some natural light. It's a tough building because there's really no windows, so it's, we'd have to get, did we receive approval to put windows? I don't recall. So we'd have to get historic approval to add windows where they weren't formally, because historic doesn't allow for, I mean, they allow it, but you have to get approval to do it. So there's some hurdles that we have to cross, but
Are there any cell towers in that smokestack or just on the exterior?
we took them down. And whenever possible, I take them. I'm not a big fan of cell towers.
Yeah.
So this one had one, and we were able to have it removed. So at a loss of income, but you get rid of the eyesore of that.
Aesthetics.
Yeah, I hope everybody still has good cell phone service, but
Thank you.
Do you have any specific questions on the traffic? I know you have the reports and materials, but our work is here if you have a specific concern. I think that the reports have been straightforward, that you won't see change in the level of service during the peak hours as a result of the development, but you know, you can answer any specific questions that you might have or concerns that you might have.
Now, you are aware of other construction sites going on in the near future, close by?
I believe that the original report contemplated development across the way. Correct. That I don't know is going forward anymore at this point, but maybe we contemplated an office building being built in the parking lot across the street. So it even contemplated more traffic than what was being built, but it took the schools that Cumberland that you mentioned. It's the same company that did the reports for those developments as well. It's taken into account the other residential conversions that have happened in the area since we were first here at master plan. So it addressed what they wanted to see done in the improved master plan. And then I believe Glenn has suggested a condition that there be a post-construction follow-up. I think I saw in his recommendation, and we're prepared to do that as well, to make sure that, you know, if something did change substantially, that we could address going forward. We worked very, extensively on the traffic. We know that's a concern when we were using it. But don't anticipate there's no data to suggest that there's going to be a noticeable change in peak hours.
I don't have a question about traffic, but just a comment that to some extent it is what it is. We're not taking farmland and putting a housing development on it that's going to create traffic. This is a building that exists with hundreds of parking spaces that exist. Something's going to go there, and I can't think of any use you could put there that won't, bring traffic. But I think unlike a lot of the projects we've seen on this end of Broad Street, where the problem is the only way to get out is onto Broad Street, this project at least has lots of different routes. You can go to Mendon Road, you can go to Broad Street, to Dexter Street, to get to Attlebury, you can go up to High Street, so there's just lots of possibilities for people to ingress and egress out of the site. So we're all going to always complain about traffic. It is a huge issue. I don't want to minimize it, but I think in this particular project, there really is no way around it. It's going to be what it's going to be, and I think there's ways to manage it, and I think those have been incorporated into the plans.
You're gonna go one way if you want to get to 146, one way if you're commuting into Central Falls and Pawtucket, another way if you're gonna go 295, to get to Lonsdale, you have a lot of options. When I find myself, I drive one way in and a different way out. But I don't think it's anything that you're gonna find. I know the data shows it's not something you're gonna find a significant impact.
Well, I can remember way back when. I'm not a native Cumberlandite, but I moved here almost 50 years ago. So my kids grew up here. And Inn and Hope, when it was running, there was also the Stop and Shop and a number of other activities. So I can remember the traffic. And everybody lived with it.
Well, and think about how packed that parking lot was.
Oh, unbelievable.
On a
Christmas
Friday
time,
night.
nightmare, so to speak. But it's, you live with it because it is what it is. So I think what Mr. Butler was getting at is, it's not gonna be any different. In fact, it might even be less because the traffic's gonna be different. It's not as though you've got business hours from, maybe 8 in the morning till 10 at night or so, where there's constant traffic coming and going and people going to Stop and Shop and so on. But if you're living here, you're gonna, you'll be there, go to work, come back home, enjoy your weekends. So,
Well, and in the world of remote work, you might not even be doing that. That's right. You might be leaving to go to dinner, but not to go to work.
right. Well, that's a good question. Is it expected that there would be empty nesters more than there would be families, or?
Yeah, so they're one bedroom and studio units predominantly with a couple of 2 bedrooms sprinkled in. So you've heard Glenn talk about the lack of impact on schools. So they're either going to be young professionals or people who are downsizing and want to be in the town, like that mill feel. So that's, and then again, that's what they specialize in. That's what the kind of buildings that they run as apartment buildings. So, just the unit makeup alone is going to have it where you have, smaller households.
Anybody have any other questions they can think of? Okay, so this is a public hearing, so I will open up the floor for anybody in the audience who has any questions or comments that they would like to offer. Just please come to the podium and give us your name and address for the record.
Good evening. Name's Mike Bode, I reside at Nate Whipple. Mike Bode, B-O-D-A-Y, Nate Whipple Highway. First, as a resident and taxpayer here, I totally support this. This is a great, great, great project we look forward to. It's nice to see this building being resurrected again. From the perspective of a teacher, we have a perfect opportunity to preserve some history here, which is lacking. Okay, what am I saying here? Back in 1635, Roger Williams settled in this spot. I'm sorry, William Blackstone. Oh, God, correction, that's a teacher.
Oh,
William
nice.
Blackstone
Well, they were friends.
settled in. Thanks, Dave. And that's 2 years prior to Roger Williams being chased out of Massachusetts. Okay, why is that important? Well, there's a lot of history sitting here. What did Blackstone do? He had this yellow sweeting apples. He had the white bull he had. He was a sage of the wilderness. He had Study Hill. Study Hall was his building. Abbott was his servant. The Gore was one of the areas here. He had a Catholic oak that he performed some of his ministry under. The Narragansett Indians, 2 years after he passed away, came and burned the whole homestead down. Okay, how does it pertain to this? Let's preserve some of that. When they're building this structure here, can't we have something that says, well, this is Sage of the Wilderness building over here? Something about pretending William Blackstone, we have Inn and Hope Way. Can we have William Blackstone Way, parking area? we have something, a drive to honor Abbott? Can we have something that says Study Hill, some history behind it? Cumberland, we have this. No other district in the state has what we have here. We're way before anybody else in the state. Instead of burying in this history, we should highlight it for Cumberland. We possess this. Nobody else has this in the state. So why don't we incorporate some of these names? So again, 1635. This predates, obviously, Ann and Hope by a lot of years, right? Put plaques on this so the people who are living there understand the history behind this area. Ann and Hope's very valuable, but I think it's more important to recognize the founder here that came here way before anyone else. The thing that he had these special apples, that's another thing. Maybe we could plant a tree like that to recognize what he did. The apple tree, nobody else had. The white bull, maybe they could dedicate a building to that, or a site to that, or other part on here.
Or maybe a beer.
I'm sorry?
Maybe a beer? You're talking about having a brew house?
All kinds of, right. But there's a lot of compartments inside the building itself that we could designate in honor of William Blackstone. I would like to see that. I don't see why we're burying him all the time. We have a little park across the street that 99% of the people go by, have no idea what it's about. So let's keep that memory intact. So as we're doing the renovations here, let's take all these names and include it in the development. And when the people move in there, they're gonna understand, oh, I understand Ann and Hope was here, but who was here before it? That whole hill, before they excavated it. There's all kinds of history sitting there. And let's take advantage of that and teach the kids, because our kids are definitely not learning that right now. Spending time in the classroom, they don't know anything about these things. Let's not bury it. Let's highlight it. That's something we possess that nobody else has. Let's take advantage of it. And we're at the stages where we're building it right now. You should be able to incorporate some of these names into the history of this. I mean, that's my recommendation. And I would hope they would follow through on something like that. I have all the names over here.
But wasn't there a tree right there in that area that?
Right, that was the Catholic oak.
Right.
Right.
And that, they tied that to William Blackstone.
I'm sorry?
They tied that to William Blackstone?
Oh,
That
yes,
area?
yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. He used he had his ministry there.
Yeah.
And he and Roger Williams would dialogue back and forth. He would go and minister in Providence, and Blackstone would come up here at times. Back and forth all the time. So, I mean, these things, let's present that. Well, like I said, the sweet apple, we can do the same thing with the Catholic oak, put another oak tree there, and put some kind of signage on something like that. So when you're moving into a place like that, you can, this is a very historical place. Let's preserve that, and then take advantage of it. We have something that no other town has right now. Let's not bury it. Let's utilize it right now. Now's the time to do it, before everything's completed. So I would hope they will incorporate some of these ideas in the development of that.
Is there a date on the building, sir? Do you know? Somewhere on it, gentlemen, anybody know if there's a date on the building? Like
The mill?
I think there's a date on the tower, 1880 something.
There was a date on the tower near the clock years back. Yeah, right.
Yeah, just curious.
There was a
Just the
date.
one, I just wondering if you knew officially.
But you look at the date of Ann and Hope, and look at the date when he came in 1635. That's a different impact completely. So you're going to Ann and Hope, but what was here prior to that? We should learn about that.
We don't have teachers anymore like Mr. Baudet. He was a teacher, and to try to get, the kids, a little bit of history of the real important things, even Nine Men's Misery for that matter, in Cumberland. And a lot of kids don't know that. So
Well, simple history.
I like the idea.
Even question for the planning board here. Cumberland High School was built in 1962. What was there before Cumberland High School? Right. Back in 1833, the town built a poorhouse. All our children go to that school and don't have the famous idea or was there before that? That's history that we bury all the time. So before we finish this project, let's do something before we bury this too, at the same time, and educate the people there, educate our kids, educate the town, and highlight it. You know, we're always trying to attract people here, right? That's another way to do it. Teach the history at the same time. We have it sitting here, take advantage of it.
I agree. Yes,
Can I just quickly respond to this?
please.
Because it's important to us. As I mentioned earlier, we're architects and interior designers, and we've had a relationship with Mr. Corsetti since ZDS was born in 2015. So we've been responsible for each of his mills. And if you go to the Wanskuck Mill, we celebrate the history of the property just like it's being explained. If you go into that mill, you'll see historic photos with descriptions underneath them that explain what was done at the property and what its historic use was. And we use it as an opportunity to tell a story, and that usually sets the tone for our interior design, which is something that we haven't even begun here yet. But we're really, really excited to do that. So I, as the architect of record, will certainly collaborate with this gentleman and learn a little bit more about the history he has, so we can use that as a starting point for the interior design of this project.
Super.
Baudet is great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Baudet. Thank you. Anyone else have any questions, comments? Going once, going twice? Okay. I will close the public hearing at
Oh,
8.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, anybody, I'm sorry, anybody in the queue?
Yes, there's somebody online. The individual with their hand raised can go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me? This is Deborah Vine-Smith speaking.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so I have some questions. It would have been nice if I could have done it in between every presentation. So here goes. Number one.
Before we begin, could you give us your name and address for the record?
Okay, Deborah Vine-Smith, Colonial Avenue, Cumberland, Rhode Island.
Could you be a little bit slower, giving us
Okay,
your
sorry.
name?
Deb Vine Smith, Colonial Avenue, Cumberland.
It's Deborah Vine-Smith.
Okay, question number one. When they talk about one-bedroom homes and studios, does this imply these are live, work spaces?
I'm sorry, we cannot hear you clearly.
Okay, so I'll try again. So are the units live, work spaces meant for artists?
I don't know what she said.
I believe.
Are the units live? Yeah, but wait, and I have to take it from her. I can't take it from you or anyone else. So, we've run into this before. I can't understand what she's saying. And if I can't get it down, the answer to her question is no.
Are there any live workspaces for artists?
Does somebody have an answer?
You might have to go to the mic, Mr. Chair.
I know you have to hear her, but she sent written comments. Maybe it'll help you hear her better. I don't know. But she's asking if there are live-work units. The answer to that is no.
Is that correct? Is that what this gentleman just said? Is that what your question is?
That's one of them. That's one.
One, okay, just be aware, it's not necessarily the way you're speaking, it's because you're speaking, the microphone, the speakers in this room are very acoustically at fault. So it's not your fault, it's where what you're speaking into, which is this humongous room with a high ceiling and a wicked echo.
Okay, so the other one is I want to know, are there inclusivity in the sense that there will be handicap accessible units available?
I think what she's asking about is, is the building handicap accessible, and are the units, I think what she's saying, inclusivity? I mean, imagine we comply with.
The entire building's accessible, and we have to meet building code in every case. So you have a percentage of units that have to be accessible, and there's a quantity per type that would have to be accessible, and we would be following standard building code and Accessibilities Act for that. All the public spaces will be accessible. There may be a unique instance because this is an existing building. I don't know of any. But there may be something that we stumble on that we'll have to get relief for, and we'll go to the building board to seek that relief when and if that comes up. But I don't think we will.
Okay, so the other questions I have to do with addressing light pollution, rain garden consideration, harvesting rainwater for the cooling system, and the other is in reference to the impervious surfaces. Would we be having some alternative to that? And how about if we would reduce the grass? Because grass is so yesteryear. And how many stairways and elevators are there?
Understand it
I'm
either.
not understanding what you're saying, so you're not gonna get a record from me if this goes somewhere else. Just tell me. I can't understand it.
How many stairs and elevators will there be?
She wants to know. For what it's, I will repeat her question if that helps. I don't know what else to try to do to keep us moving. But the latter part of her question that she repeated was how many stairs and elevators are there in the building? Maybe Eric can answer that.
Is that your question?
That's one of them.
I mean, the building's so massive. I'm doing my best to count the staircases in this building. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 8 to 10 staircases in this building, and there's 5 to 6 elevators in this building, one of which is a freight elevator. I could spend a little bit more time being more specific, but I don't understand the relevance of the question.
The other part of the question had to do with landscaping and grass, and we kind of went through a lot of that at length throughout the presentation today. Obviously, primary goal of this design is to eliminate the just massive broken pavement that exists there today by greening it up, which I would suggest is a significant improvement. I walked it yesterday with DPW, coincidentally. We're both out there walking, and I thought about how much of a different walk it's going to be in 3 years when it's done. So, I mean, I don't think we're really interested in lessening the green space that we've provided for. Certainly what we've provided for complies with what's required of us. The rest of it seems to be opinion and design that, I certainly don't want to get an argument over with. I mean, we hear her comments, we've read them in the email, and, I think what we've done overall here is be very sensitive to the historic character of this building, the needs to improve the sites, going above and beyond to deal with stormwater, and certainly have committed to incorporate the different questions that were raised as to the plantings and the seedlings, et cetera. We've factored in everything we could possibly factor in to give you a great project, and we'll consider what's being said and what we've read I believe it's the same person who's commenting.
All right.
We have a
Yeah, we
communication
have, yeah.
from Ms. Mine-Smith.
Right.
And it was distributed.
Okay,
to me.
but I have other,
Excuse me for 1 minute, please. And it was, we just received this evening, and some of the comments that we've been talking about is included in her
Yes.
communication, so this is part of the record.
And we did read it before we made the presentation, so.
Right.
okay, so
Deborah,
I have.
have you
I
had the
have-
opportunity, Deb, to see this information that we have in front of us?
I looked at the document, but
Deb,
it didn't have.
are you there?
I am. I looked at
Okay.
the document that was available. I looked at the.
I would suggest that when you have the opportunity,
But I have some other questions. So the concern I have is, I believe you're gonna need permission from the railroad company to put a fence near the tracks. And then the other concern I have is
Permission from the
childproof
railroad.
screening. So kids don't fall out of windows.
I mean, it was, do we need permission from the railroad for screening? And then something
Fencing.
about the windows? You know, I'm not sure, I appreciate the discussion we've had about windows. I'm not sure how much of that really goes into a preliminary plan approval, but I thought it was a constructive conversation that certainly we benefited from your questions. So I think we've addressed windows, and I don't believe we need any rail approvals. We've got our DOT paperwork, we've got all of our state approvals in line, so whatever approvals we need from the government, we're going to get, so.
yeah, is she asking for approval from the railroad company?
Right,
Yeah.
for the fence.
Well,
they need-
this gentleman just answered your question. Did you hear his response to that,
It was indirect.
Deb?
It was indirect.
Yes.
I'm even gonna move my seat. There's talking going on. Where is the noise coming? Where is the speaking coming from?
Speakers from there.
I'm not hearing anything. I'm not getting, people are responding to questions. I'm not getting the questions.
So, Mr. Chair,
Mr. Modica.
we can limit public comment, if you like,
Well,
to a certain time frame, like 2 or 3 minutes.
okay, what I would suggest at this point, because we do have a communication from Ms. Vine-Smith. We have, I believe the applicant has, but if she has any other questions, maybe would be the best thing to do is for her to submit those questions to you, and you can distribute those questions to our applicant and the rest of the board. Because it's very difficult, acoustics are not that great in this building, and there's echoes that are bouncing off the walls. And I think that right now it's kind of fruitless to try to, don't go any further with this, other than get her comments and questions in writing, just as she had previously submitted.
Can she come down and take a look at the information that we have, Mr. Chair?
Yes, absolutely.
Deb, did you hear that? Hello, Deb?
Oh.
All right,
She's
never
left
mind.
the virtual world. She's not with us anymore.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
She's as frustrated as we are.
yeah. Is there anyone else in the queue?
If anybody else would like to comment, hit the raise hand icon. No, there's nobody.
Okay. Thank you. So again, officially, I will close the public hearing at 8:19 PM and restrict comments to the board. Does the board have anything else to add at this point?
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to make a comment congratulating the team who worked on the project. I think, as it's been alluded to several times tonight, folks, especially in this area, have a very strong emotional connection to this particular building. And I sense from the applicant that he gets that, and wants to celebrate that and, preserve that history and those feelings folks have. I think the landscaping is great. Obviously, it's a cement jungle the way it is now, so I think I was very surprised actually at the amount of green space that you folks were able to add. It's really impressive. I think it makes a huge, huge difference. We talked about the traffic. I was glad to hear that self-storage is kind of at the bottom of the list of things that might end up there. I'm just personally not a big fan of self-storage, but I understand that the nonprofit I run, the building we own, we have subterranean space, and it is impossible to find uses for it because nobody wants to be underground. So I understand that as a last resort, self-storage is probably the only logical thing to put in a subterranean space. But I think if there's other alternatives, that on a lot of different levels would be preferable. But again, congratulations. This is a really great project.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. I echo your comments. Is there anyone else? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we approve the preliminary plan for the Ann and Hope Mill redevelopment project as it is consistent with the goals and purposes of the comprehensive plan and will have no negative impact on the built environment. Not adding these as conditions, but just as things for the applicant to consider before final plan, if possible, increasing the number of native plants that are included in the landscaping plan, and if feasible, having some pedestrian access from the east parking lot up to Broad Street. And include in the motion all of the findings and fact from the planning department's memo dated April 2nd, 2025.
I have a motion by Mr. Butler. Do I have a second? Second by Ms. Reese. Any discussion?
I have a discussion.
Mr. Costa?
I would just like to add to the planning department, thank you for all your efforts over the last few years on this. I know you've also worked very hard, and also you were commended by this group also for all your time and energy and how easy it was to work with you. So I thank you for that.
Any other discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and the chair also votes yes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Nice job.
Okay.
Isabel's got the motion to adjourn.
We have a public comment. Hearing none. Motion to adjourn. Motion by Ms. Reese, seconded by
Me.
Mr. Costa. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, everyone.